I watched my sister Emma tear open the acceptance letter from Stanford, her hands trembling with anticipation. The irony wasn't lost on me. In my previous life, that letter had been mine. This time, I'd made sure she found it first. "Oh my God!" she breathed, her face flushing with triumph. "I got in. I actually got into Stanford." Mom rushed over, squealing with delight, wrapping Emma in her arms like she'd just won an Olympic gold medal. Dad appeared from his study, a rare smile on his face, already reaching for his wallet to talk about celebration dinners and shopping trips for dorm supplies. I stood in the doorway, invisible as always, and smiled. They had no idea what was coming. Let me take you back to where this really began. Not 3 months ago when college acceptance letters started arriving, but 26 years ago, to the day I was born as the second daughter of the Morrison family. My first life ended at 32, on a rainy Tuesday in March. I just left my third job in 2 years. Another position I'd lost because I couldn't handle the pressure, couldn't meet the deadlines, couldn't seem to function like a normal adult. The truth was that my childhood had left me so broken, so thoroughly convinced of my own worthlessness, that I'd never learned to fight for myself. I walked into traffic. The doctor said it was an accident. I knew better. But then I woke up, gasping, in my childhood bedroom, 14 years old again, with every memory of my future intact. I knew what was coming. I knew every betrayal, every manipulation, every moment of cruelty that would unfold over the next 18 years. And this time, I had the power to change it. You see, Emma wasn't always the golden child. When we were very young, before my memories of the first timeline, things had been almost equal. But somewhere around age 7, my parents made a calculated decision. They only had enough resources, emotional and financial, to fully invest in one child. Emma, born 18 months before me, got that investment. I became the backup plan, the safety net, the one who existed to make Emma's life easier. My mother, Patricia Morrison, was a former pageant queen who'd married my father, Richard, for his promising career in real estate development. She was beautiful, cold, and utterly pragmatic. Children to her were investments. Emma was her prized thoroughbred. I was the workhorse. Dad wasn't cruel by nature, just absent. He worked 16-hour days building his empire and left the child rearing to Mom. By the time he noticed how badly I was being treated, I was already too broken to advocate for myself. And Emma had learned to play him like a violin, appearing perfect and dutiful whenever he was around. Emma herself had been shaped by this dynamic. Given everything, praised for nothing but existing, she'd grown entitled and vicious. She saw me not as a sister, but as a threat. Evidence that she wasn't actually special, just chosen. So she worked hard to keep me down, to prove she deserved her status. In my first life, the worst of it had started my sophomore year of high school. I'd scored higher than Emma on the PSAT. Not by much, just 30 points, but enough to shatter the family narrative. Mom's response was swift and brutal. "You clearly cheated," she'd said, her voice icy. "I'm signing you up for extra tutoring, and you'll be doing Emma's homework to help her improve her scores." I'd done Emma's homework for 3 years. I'd written her college essays. I'd taken her SAT prep tests and explained the answers. And when we both applied to colleges, I'd gotten into Stanford, my dream school, the place I'd fantasized about since I was 12 years old, while Emma had been rejected. Mom had called it unfortunate timing. She'd sat me down at the kitchen table, Emma crying dramatically in the background, and explained that Emma's mental health was fragile. Seeing me go to Stanford while she went to a state school would devastate her. It might even make her suicidal. "You're stronger," Mom had said, gripping my hand with false warmth. "You can handle disappointment. Emma needs this more than you do." So I'd declined Stanford's acceptance. I'd sent a heartfelt email explaining that I couldn't afford it, that family circumstances required me to stay local. And Emma had called Stanford's admissions office, explained that her sister had tragically had to decline, and asked if they'd reconsider her application given the new opening. They hadn't, but the state school she attended had been good enough to launch the successful marketing career that my connections and work had built for her. I'd gone to community college, worked full-time at a grocery store to pay for it, lived at home, and paid rent to my parents while Emma got a free ride through her university experience. By the time I was 25, Emma had a thriving career, a handsome fiancé, and a condo in the city. I had an associate's degree, crippling depression, and a studio apartment in the worst part of town. But that was the old timeline. This time, I had knowledge. I had time. And I had a plan. The first thing I did after being reborn was test my memories. Small things at first. The score of a football game that hadn't happened yet. The winner of a reality TV show. The date of a surprise quiz in Mr. Henderson's history class. Everything checked out. My memories were perfect. The second thing I did was change my approach. In my first life, I'd been so desperate for my parents' love that I debased myself trying to earn it. This time, I understood the truth. Their love was never available to me. It was a finite resource, already entirely allocated to Emma. Fighting for scraps would only destroy me again. So instead, I became strategic. I stopped doing Emma's homework. When she asked, I looked her straight in the eye and said, "No." The shock on her face was almost worth the screaming tantrum that followed, and the week of silent treatment from Mom. But I held firm. If Mom wanted to punish me with cold dinners and canceled birthday celebrations, fine. I was used to it. But I wouldn't actively sabotage my own future anymore. I studied hard. I got a part-time job at a coffee shop and saved every penny. I built a secret college fund that my parents knew nothing about. I documented everything, every instance of favoritism, every cruel comment, every time I was left out of family activities. I kept a journal with dates, times, and details, just in case. And I made friends. Real friends, not the superficial relationships I'd had before. I joined the debate team where I discovered I was actually quite good at arguing when I wasn't being gaslit into believing I was worthless. I volunteered at a women's shelter, which gave me perspective on my situation and connected me with resources. I built a life separate from my family, but the most important thing I did was research. I spent hours in the library, then later on my laptop, investigating scholarships, elite prep programs, summer opportunities that Emma didn't even know existed. I found a full-ride scholarship to a summer program at Yale that only accepted 30 students nationwide. I applied without telling anyone. I got in. When the acceptance letter arrived, I hid it. I knew that if my parents found out, they'd find a way to sabotage it. Mom would claim I was needed at home. Dad would schedule a mandatory family vacation the same weeks. Emma would manufacture a crisis that required my presence. So I told them I was doing a summer enrichment program at the community college, and I went to Connecticut for 8 weeks. That summer changed everything. I was surrounded by brilliant, driven students from all over the country. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the family disappointment. I was just another gifted kid trying to figure out my future. I thrived. My debate skills improved dramatically. I took advanced courses in economics and political science. I networked with professors and professionals. And I met Dr. Eleanor Chen, a visiting professor from MIT who ran a special mentorship program for students from difficult backgrounds. After I won the summer program's final debate on economic policy, she'd pulled me aside. "You have something special," she'd said, her dark eyes intense. "A kind of resilience and strategic thinking that can't be taught. But I can see you're carrying a lot of weight. Want to talk about it?" I'd broken down and told her everything. The favoritism, the emotional abuse, the way my family had tried to sabotage my first life. Dr. Chen had listened without judgment, nodding occasionally, taking notes. "Here's what's going to happen," she'd said when I finished. "You're going to apply to MIT. I'm going to write you a recommendation letter. You're going to get in, and you're going to take the full scholarship we're going to arrange for you, but until then, you're going to play this smart. Don't let them know what you're capable of. Let your sister think she's winning." That conversation had been 2 years ago. Since then, Dr. Chen had been my secret weapon. She'd connected me with opportunities, reviewed my essays, helped me prepare for interviews. She'd taught me that intelligence wasn't just about grades, it was about strategy, timing, and knowing when to reveal your hand. So when college application season came around my senior year, I was ready. Emma applied to all the prestigious schools: Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton. She'd improved her grades with intensive tutoring that cost my parents $30,000. She'd participated in activities, though mostly as a member rather than a leader. Her essays were good. I'd seen the drafts lying around and privately critiqued them for what they were: polished but shallow, focused on surface level achievements rather than genuine growth or insight. I applied to different schools. Overlapping, yes, but with a different emphasis. I applied to MIT, Columbia, Berkeley, and yes, Stanford. But I also applied to a few mid-tier schools and made sure my parents saw those applications. I told them I was being realistic about my chances. Emma had smirked when she'd overheard that conversation. The key part of my plan involved timing. I'd researched college acceptance letter schedules obsessively. I knew Stanford sent their letters the third week of March. MIT sent theirs the second week. Columbia sent theirs the last week of March. I also knew from my past life that Emma would be rejected from Stanford. Her grades were good, but not exceptional. Her extracurriculars were fine, but not outstanding. And her essays, while polished, lacked the authentic voice and unique perspective that top schools looked for. She was, in every way, a perfectly average, excellent student, one of 10,000 identical applications. But there was one thing I could do that would make this entire plan fall into place. I could get into Stanford and make sure Emma saw the acceptance letter before I did. The letters arrived when I was at my coffee shop job. I'd timed it perfectly. I knew the mail came at 2 p.m., and I'd taken a shift from noon to 6. Emma got home from her internship at 3 p.m. Mom worked from home. My Stanford acceptance letter was thick, heavy, the kind of envelope that announces good news before you even open it. I'd already gotten my MIT acceptance 2 weeks earlier, delivered to a P.O. box I'd rented specifically for this purpose. MIT had offered me a full ride, plus a stipend. I was already planning to go there. But Stanford? Stanford was the bait. I'd done one more thing to prepare. I'd written myself 2 acceptance letters on Stanford letterhead I'd carefully recreated. One was the real letter, accepting me with a full financial aid package that covered everything. The other was a modified version, still an acceptance, but with minimal financial aid, making it essentially unaffordable. That fake letter was the one I'd left where Emma would find it. When I got home from work that evening, the house was in chaos. Emma was sobbing in her room. Her rejection letter from Stanford crumpled on her bed. Mom was on the phone with Dad, her voice high and tight with stress. And there, on the kitchen counter, was my opened Stanford acceptance letter, the fake one. "You got in," Mom said flatly when she saw me. Her face was a mixture of anger and calculation. "Stanford accepted you." "Oh," I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. I picked up the letter, scanned it, let my face fall. "But this financial aid package, Mom, this would cost over $40,000 a year. We can't afford this." I watched her process this, watched the gears turn. She glanced toward Emma's room where the sobbing had reached a crescendo. "No," she said slowly. "We can't. You'll have to decline. You have other options." "Actually," I said, playing my part perfectly, "what if Emma tried again? I mean, if I'm declining, there's an open spot. Maybe if she explained the situation, mentioned that financial circumstances prevented me from accepting—" Mom's eyes lit up. This was exactly what she wanted. A way to give Emma what she wanted while maintaining the narrative that I was choosing to sacrifice for my sister. "That's very mature of you," she said, in the warmest tone she'd used with me in months. I'm sure Emma would appreciate that. Over the next week, the household hummed with activity. Emma called Stanford's admissions office daily. She wrote an appeal letter that I helped her with, explaining that her sister had been forced to decline due to financial hardship and requesting reconsideration of her application. She had her guidance counselor call. She had Dad, who donated to Stanford's alumni fund years ago, make calls to his connections. It didn't work. Stanford didn't reconsider, but Emma's desperation, her obsession with Stanford as the only path to success, reached a fever pitch. She stopped eating. She stopped sleeping. She made increasingly wild plans, taking a gap year and reapplying, transferring after freshman year, lying on her application next time. "It's not fair," she wailed at family dinner one night. "You don't even care about Stanford. You were going to turn it down anyway. Why do you get everything?" I almost laughed. In what universe had I ever gotten everything? But I played my role. "I'm sorry, Emma. I really am. I wish things were different." 2 weeks later, my MIT acceptance letter arrived, this time at home where everyone could see it. I'd timed this reveal carefully. Emma had just gotten her acceptance to USC with a partial scholarship. It was a good school, a school that most students would be thrilled to attend. But in Emma's mind, anything less than Stanford was failure. I opened the MIT envelope at the dinner table, read the letter silently, let the shock show on my face. "What is it?" Mom demanded. "MIT," I said slowly. "They accepted me, full scholarship, full ride, plus a $15,000 annual stipend for living expenses and research." The silence at the table was deafening. "MIT?" Emma's voice was small, confused. "You applied to MIT?" "It was a reach school," I said with a carefully crafted shrug. "I didn't think I'd get in." Dad was reading over my shoulder now, his face pale. This is one of the best offers I've ever seen." "Honey, this is incredible." Mom's face was doing something complicated. She was trying to look happy for me, but her eyes were cold, calculating. "Well, that's wonderful, but MIT is so far away. And it's such a technical school. Are you sure it's the right fit?" "Actually, their economics and political science programs are among the best in the world," I said mildly. "And I've already connected with a professor there who's doing research I'm interested in." "You've been talking to professors?" Emma's voice was rising now. "How long have you been planning this?" "Since sophomore year," I said truthfully. "When I went to that summer program." "The community college program?" Mom said, confused. "No, the Yale program. The one I got the full scholarship for." I watched the realization dawn on their faces. For 2 years, I'd been building a secret life, a secret future, right under their noses. While they'd been focused on Emma, I'd been working with some of the best mentors in the country. Emma's breakdown was spectacular. She stood up so fast her chair fell backward, her face red and blotchy. "You lied. You've been lying this whole time." "I didn't lie," I said calmly. "I just didn't tell you everything. There's a difference." "Richard," Mom said urgently, turning to Dad. "Say something. This isn't right. She's been sneaking around, deceiving us." But Dad was still reading my acceptance letter, his expression thoughtful. "Patricia, this is a full ride to MIT. Do you understand what that means? They don't give these to just anyone." "She probably cheated," Emma spat. "Just like she did on the PSAT." "I didn't cheat on the PSAT," I said, my voice hardening. "I scored higher than you because I'm smarter than you. I've always been smarter than you. You've just had people doing your work for you for so long that you forgot what actual achievement looks like." "How dare you?" Mom started. "No," I interrupted, standing up now. "How dare you? How dare all of you? Do you have any idea what you've done to me? I spent my entire childhood being told I was worthless, being used as free labor, being treated like I only existed to make Emma's life easier. And you know what the funny thing is? I let you. I believed you when you said I wasn't good enough." "We never said," Dad began. "You didn't have to say it. You showed me every single day, every time you bought Emma a new car while I took the bus, every time you paid for her designer clothes, while I wore thrift store rejects, every time you celebrated her B's while ignoring my A's. You showed me exactly what I was worth to this family." Emma was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of someone who's realized they've lost. "I'm going to MIT," I continued, "and I'm going to be successful. And you're all going to watch from the sidelines while I build the life I deserve, the life I was always capable of building. Fine, Emma shrieked. Go, see if we care. You were never part of this family anyway. Emma, Dad said sharply, but his heart wasn't in it. I looked at my parents then, really looked at them, saw them clearly for the first time in both my lives. Mom, beautiful and cold, already calculating how to spin this to her friends. Dad, weak and complicit, too focused on his business to ever be a real father. And Emma, spoiled and vicious, raised to believe the world owed her everything. You're right, I said to Emma. I was never part of this family, because this family is toxic, and I deserve better. I walked out of the dining room, up to my bedroom, and started packing. The next few months were a blur of activity. I graduated high school with a 4.0 GPA and as valedictorian, something my family didn't bother attending the ceremony for, since Emma's graduation party was the same weekend. I moved out the day after graduation, staying with my debate coach's family until the dorms opened at MIT. But before I left, I did one final thing. I took all my documentation, my journal entries, screenshots of cruel text messages, records of all the money I'd paid in rent while Emma lived free, the homework assignments I'd done for her with date stamps, and I compiled it into a detailed dossier. I made copies and put them in safe deposit boxes. I sent a copy to Dr. Chen, and I sent one to a family law attorney just in case. I didn't plan to use it, but I wanted them to know it existed. I wanted them to understand that I had receipts for everything they'd done. The real revenge, though, began when I got to MIT. College was everything I dreamed it would be. I was surrounded by brilliant people who valued intelligence and hard work. My professors were engaged and supportive. Dr. Chen became not just a mentor, but a friend, introducing me to her network of successful women in tech and finance. I threw myself into my studies. I majored in economics with a minor in computer science. I joined research projects. I started a consulting club that helped local nonprofits with their financial planning. I networked aggressively, attending every speaker event, every mixer, every opportunity to meet people who could open doors. And I thrived. Meanwhile, back home, things weren't going so well for Emma. She'd gone to USC, which by all accounts should have been a great experience. But Emma had never learned to work hard. She'd coasted on my work, on my parents' money, on her looks and charm. In college, surrounded by actually talented people, she floundered. She changed majors 3 times. She joined a sorority that she couldn't afford and came crying to Dad for money when the dues and social expenses piled up. She got placed on academic probation twice. By junior year, she was barely hanging on, taking the minimum course load and spending more time partying than studying. I knew all this because Dad started calling me. At first, it was awkward. Stilted conversations where he asked about my classes, and I gave monosyllabic answers. But gradually, he began to open up about Emma, about his concerns, about Mom's increasing desperation to maintain the facade that everything was fine. I think we made a mistake, he admitted during one call. The way we raised you girls. I think we broke something in Emma by giving her everything. She doesn't know how to fail. She doesn't know how to work for things. Yes, I said simply. You did? Is there any way to fix this? Fix Emma or fix our relationship? Both, I suppose. I considered this. In my first life, I'd never gotten this call. Dad had remained distant until I'd died. But this time, with my success so visible and Emma's failure so obvious, he was finally seeing the truth. Emma can fix herself if she wants to, I said finally. But it has to come from her. She has to want to change. As for us, I don't know, Dad. You hurt me badly. All of you did. I'm not sure there's enough trust left to build on. I understand, he said quietly. But I'd like to try, if you're willing. I thought about it. Thought about the strategic value of having my father back in my life. Thought about the part of me that was still that little girl who just wanted her daddy to love her. Maybe, I said. We'll see. But Mom and Emma weren't interested in reconciliation. As my success grew, as I landed prestigious internships, won academic awards, got profiled in MIT's alumni magazine, their resentment festered. It came to a head the summer after my junior year. I'd landed an internship at a top venture capital firm in Silicon Valley. The pay was insane, $10,000 a month for 3 months plus housing. I was working with incredibly smart people, evaluating startups, learning the ins and outs of how wealth was actually built in America. Emma, meanwhile, had graduated, barely, and moved back home. She was looking for work in marketing, but mostly she was sleeping until noon and spending Dad's money. She'd gained weight, lost her carefully maintained sorority polish, and developed a bitterness that showed in every conversation. When I came home for a weekend in August, flying in from San Francisco on the firm's dime, the contrast couldn't have been more stark. I pulled up in an Uber, wearing a designer blazer I'd bought with my internship money, carrying my laptop bag from a tech startup we'd just invested in. Emma answered the door in sweatpants and a stained t-shirt, her hair unwashed. "Oh," she said flatly, "you're here." "Mom invited me," I said, stepping past her into the foyer. "Is she home?" "She's getting her nails done. Dad's at work. It's just us." The house felt different, smaller, shabbier. Or maybe I'd changed. I looked at the photos on the wall, a shrine to Emma's accomplishments such as they were, with exactly 2 photos of me, both from elementary school. "So," Emma said, following me into the kitchen, "how's your fancy internship?" "It's great, actually. I'm learning a lot." "Must be nice, having everything handed to you." I turned to stare at her. "Are you serious right now?" "What?" "It's true. You got lucky with MIT. You got lucky with that professor who helped you. You've always been lucky." "Lucky," I repeated. "Emma, I worked my ass off. I studied while you were out partying. I built connections while you were getting your nails done. I saved money while you were spending Dad's. Nothing I have was handed to me. I earned all of it." "Only because you're selfish," she snapped. "You abandoned this family. You were supposed to help me." "Help you?" I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Emma, I spent years helping you. I did your homework. I wrote your essays. I let you take credit for my work. And where did it get me? Nowhere. Where did it get you? Barely graduating from a school you didn't even want to go to. I didn't get into Stanford because of you," she yelled. "If you had just declined like you were supposed to, if you had just—" "I did decline," I shouted back. "I declined the fake letter I left for you to find. The real acceptance letter went to MIT, and I took it because I deserved it." Emma went very still. "What?" And then I told her everything. The rebirth, the memories of my first life, the careful planning I'd done to escape. I told her about the fake Stanford letter, about the timing, about how I'd manipulated the entire situation to make her think she'd lost Stanford because of me, when really she'd never had a chance at all. You did this on purpose," she whispered. "You sabotaged me." "I freed myself," I corrected. "You sabotaged yourself by never learning to work for anything, by expecting everyone to hand you success, by being so entitled that you couldn't see your own mediocrity." She slapped me, hard. My head snapped to the side and I tasted blood where my teeth had cut my lip. For a moment, we stood there, both breathing hard. Then I smiled. "Thank you," I said quietly. "For what?" "For reminding me exactly why I left." I walked out of that house and never went back. The final act of my revenge played out over the next 2 years, and it was more complete than I could have dreamed. I graduated from MIT summa cum laude. I had multiple job offers from top firms and startups. I chose a position at a venture capital firm in New York, with a starting salary of $200,000 plus equity. I was 22 years old and already making more than my parents combined. Emma, meanwhile, bounced between retail jobs and unpaid internships. She lived at home, contributing nothing to household expenses, growing more bitter by the day. Mom tried to maintain appearances, but it was increasingly obvious that her golden child had tarnished. Dad and I had slowly rebuilt our relationship. It wasn't perfect. There was too much history, too much pain, but it was something. He'd started therapy after our conversation and was dealing with his own guilt about how he'd raised us. He'd even started pushing back against Mom's favoritism, though it was 20 years too late. But the real victory came when I was 24. I'd been at the VC firm for 2 years and had proven myself as a sharp investor with an eye for promising startups. One of the companies I'd championed, a fintech startup that helped people manage and escape debt, had just had a successful IPO. My equity stake, which had been a small part of my compensation package, was suddenly worth $8 million. $8 million. At 24 years old, I was wealthy. Not just comfortable, not just secure, but genuinely wealthy. I bought a penthouse apartment in Manhattan. I hired a financial advisor and invested wisely. I started a foundation that provided scholarships to students from abusive households, working with Dr. Chen to identify and support young people like I'd been. And then I got a call from my mother. "We need to talk," she said without preamble. "It's about your father's business." The real estate market had crashed. Dad's company, which had been over-leveraged and under-diversified, was in serious trouble. They were facing bankruptcy. They were going to lose the house, their savings, everything. "I need you to help us," Mom said. "You have money now. You're successful. We're family." I met her at a coffee shop near her house, a house that would be foreclosed on in 60 days if they couldn't come up with $200,000. Mom looked older, harder. The stress was showing in lines around her mouth, gray roots in her carefully dyed hair. Emma was with her, looking sullen and trapped. "So," I said, sipping my latte, "you need money." "You're our daughter," Mom said. "Helping family is what you do." "Is it?" I tilted my head. Because I seemed to remember being family when I needed help, and being told that I was on my own. "That was different," Mom said quickly. Emma needed to learn to stand on her own 2 feet, which she never did because you enabled her. I looked at my sister. "How much of your own money have you contributed to saving the house, Emma?" She looked away. "I don't have any money." "Right. Because you've never had a real job. You've never learned to work hard. You've never developed any actual skills." I turned back to Mom. "Here's what's going to happen. I'm not giving you any money." Mom's face went white, then red. "After everything we've done for you." "After everything you've done to me," I interrupted. "Let me be very clear. You abused me. Emotionally, psychologically, financially. You treated me like I was worthless. You sabotaged my education to benefit Emma. You made me pay rent while she lived free. You took and took and took, and you gave me nothing but pain in return." "We raised you," Emma said viciously. "We put a roof over your head, food in your mouth." "That's the legal minimum requirement for having a child," I said flatly. "You don't get points for not letting me starve. So you're just going to let us lose everything?" Mom's voice was shaking now, real fear showing through. "Yes," I said simply. "I am. Because this is called consequences. You made choices. Bad choices about how to treat me, how to raise Emma, how to manage money, and now you're facing the results of those choices." "You're a monster," Emma hissed. I laughed. "I'm a monster? I'm successful, independent, and refusing to enable your dysfunction. If that makes me a monster, I'll wear the label proudly." "Please," Mom said, and her voice broke. "We're desperate. We have nowhere else to turn." I felt nothing. That was the surprising part. I thought I'd feel triumph, or satisfaction, or even guilt. But I felt nothing at all. These people were strangers to me now, connected only by biology and bad history. "Here's what I'll do," I said finally. "I'll buy the house." Hope flashed across Mom's face. "I'll buy it at the foreclosure auction for fair market value. Then I'll rent it back to Dad, only Dad, at market rate. Emma, you'll need to find your own place. Mom, if you want to stay, you'll need to contribute to expenses. No more free rides. No more living beyond your means. You'll have a lease, and if you violate it, you're out. You can't be serious, Emma said. I'm completely serious. This is the offer. Take it or leave it. They took it. They didn't have a choice. The house transfer happened 30 days later. I hired a real estate attorney to handle everything by the book. Dad signed the lease looking smaller and older than I'd ever seen him. Emma moved into a studio apartment and got a job at a call center. Mom started working part-time at a department store, her first job in 20 years. But the story doesn't end there. 6 months after I bought the house, Emma showed up at my apartment in Manhattan. She looked different, thinner, harder, like life had finally started to beat some sense into her. "Can we talk?" she asked. I let her in, curious despite myself. "I've been doing therapy," she said, perched on my couch. "Oh, court-ordered, actually. I got a DUI. It's been really hard." "I imagine it has been. I was so angry at you. For years, I was just consumed with rage. At you, at life, at everyone. But my therapist helped me see that I was angry at the wrong person." "Oh?" "You were right. About everything. Mom and Dad fucked me up, just as badly as they fucked you up. Just in different ways. They never taught me to work for things. They never taught me that I could fail and recover. They gave me everything and expected me to be perfect, and when I couldn't be perfect, I had nothing to fall back on. I listened, saying nothing." "I know you don't owe me anything," Emma continued. "I know I treated you horribly. I was awful to you, and I can't take it back. But I'm trying to be better. I'm working a real job. I'm paying my own bills. I'm learning what you already knew, how to survive on your own." "Good," I said, and I meant it. "Do you think—" She stopped, started again. "Do you think we could ever be sisters? Real sisters?" I thought about it. Thought about the decades of damage, the years of therapy I'd done to cope with the trauma they'd inflicted. Thought about how much easier it would be to just keep them all cut off. Keep myself safe. "Maybe," I said finally. "But it would take time. And work. And you'd have to prove that you've really changed." "I will," she said fiercely. "I promise I will." And surprisingly, she did. It took years. Emma stayed in therapy, worked her way up from the call center to a legitimate marketing position. She paid off her DUI fines and got her license reinstated. She started saving money, building credit, learning to be an actual adult. We started having coffee once a month, then twice a month. We texted occasionally, nothing deep, just checking in. She asked about my work, and I asked about hers. It was strange and awkward and sometimes painful, but it was real. Mom never changed. She stayed bitter, resentful, convinced that I'd betrayed her. She and I barely spoke, interacting only when necessary for legal or financial matters related to the house. Eventually, she moved out, unable to accept the power dynamic shift. Last I heard, she was living with her sister in Florida, still telling people that Emma had gone to Stanford. Dad and I built something almost like a real relationship. We had dinner once a month when I visited New York. He apologized, properly apologized for everything. He couldn't fix the past, but he could acknowledge it and try to do better. It wasn't perfect, but it was more than I'd ever expected. And me, I kept building. I moved to a new venture capital firm, one where I could be a partner. I expanded my foundation, helping hundreds of students escape abusive situations and get the education they deserved. I bought a beach house. I traveled. I dated. I built a life so full and rich and beautiful that the little girl who'd been told she was worthless could barely recognize it. I'm 32 now, the same age I was when I died in my first life. But this time, I'm not walking into traffic. I'm walking into a conference room to close a deal on a $50 million fund. I'm walking through Central Park with a man I love, discussing where we might want to settle down. I'm walking into the future I built for myself, brick by brick, decision by decision. Emma called me last week. I got promoted, she said, her voice bright with genuine pride. Senior marketing manager. It's not VP or anything fancy, but it's mine. I earned it. That's amazing, I said, and I meant it. I'm proud of you. Thank you for not giving up on me, she said quietly. I know I didn't deserve it. Everyone deserves a chance to change, I replied, even if it takes them a while to figure out they need to. After we hung up, I stood on my balcony looking out at the Manhattan skyline. I thought about my first life, about the girl who'd been so broken that she'd given up. I thought about the moment I'd woken up 14 again, terrified and angry and determined. And I thought about the choice I'd made, not to seek revenge for its own sake, but to build something better, to free myself, to prove that I was worth more than they'd ever given me credit for. The revenge wasn't in watching them fail. The revenge was in succeeding so completely, so undeniably, that they had to acknowledge what they'd lost when they chose to break me instead of build me up. The revenge was in becoming someone they could never have imagined I'd be. The revenge was in living well. And standing there, 32 years old in a timeline I'd created through sheer force of will, I realized something profound. I'd won. Not just against my family, not just against the people who'd hurt me. I'd won against the universe that had tried to tell me I didn't matter. I'd won against my own past. My phone buzzed. A text from Emma. Thanks for believing in me. Love you, sis. I smiled, typing back, love you too. And I meant it, because that was the ultimate victory. Not just surviving, not just succeeding, but learning to forgive without forgetting, to move forward without denying the past, to build a future so bright it illuminated all the dark places I'd come from. I let Emma take my Stanford acceptance. And then I built an empire she couldn't even dream of. That's how you win. Not by crushing your enemies, though sometimes that happens along the way. You win by becoming so completely, undeniably, magnificently yourself that the people who tried to diminish you are forced to acknowledge your light. You win by being free. And I was finally truly beautifully free.